Listen, y'all, I understand that these girls are of age, but this is just disgusting to me. It feels very predatory to me.
And that has nothing to do with him having this baby or him having this side girl for almost 15 years.
Imagine this, a secret web of underground tunnels hidden beneath one of the most famous homes in Hollywood. A network so vast, so mysterious that even the FBI was left stunned as they uncovered its dark secrets. That's right, the rumors swirling around Sean Diddy Combs have taken a jaw-dropping new turn, and it's almost too wild to believe. But trust us, this story is just getting started. For months, whispers had circulated about Diddy's lavish lifestyle, his extravagant parties, and the strange, almost eerie going-ons at his estates. From the outside, it all just seemed like the typical high life of a music mogul. But now, with the FBI digging deeper, literally, into his properties, it looks like we've all been missing the bigger picture.
Man, I ain't gonna lie.
The FBI has been investigating Diddy since the end of 2023, after a series of shocking lawsuits brought forward by women like Cassie Ventura, who accused him of all sorts of disturbing behavior spanning their decade-long relationship. While those civil suits were damning, it wasn't until the FBI started raiding his homes in early 2024 that things took a much darker and more bizarre turn. These weren't just your everyday searches, either. Agents weren't looking for something as mundane as financial records or stolen art. No, they were after something far more sinister. In March 2024, one of Diddy's sprawling mansions in Los Angeles was the scene of a major bust. And while it wasn't the first time federal agents had been there, what they found this time was unlike anything anyone could have imagined. After receiving an anonymous tip about suspicious activity at the residence, agents arrived with one goal: to uncover what had been buried beneath the surface, both literally and figuratively.
Breaking news tonight, Sean Diddy Combs has been arrested in a Manhattan hotel this evening after a grand jury indicted the music mogul. His attorney tells CNN that he is currently being processed. The charges are unclear as of
now. Picture this. Diddy's mansion is a massive 170,000 square foot estate, complete with all the trappings of luxury. Think infinity pools, private movie theaters, and more bedrooms than you could count. But hidden beneath it all, a labyrinth of tunnels sealed off for who knows how long. These weren't just casually built in for convenience or some architectural quirk. No, these tunnels had a purpose, and that purpose, and that purpose, and that purpose, and that purpose was far more chilling than anyone could have predicted. According to sources close to the investigation, these tunnels weren't just empty passageways or secret escape routes. They were something much darker, think dungeons, with cells built into the walls, locked from the outside. It was like something out of a horror movie, except this was real life, and the FBI wasn't just dealing with rumors anymore. They had hard evidence in their hands. But what exactly were these cells for, and more importantly, who had been inside them?
I came here today just to tell the truth, so hopefully we can get down to the bottom of this. I'm 100%, the charges against me are 100% false, and hopefully due to time, we'll start to see that.
Rumors have been swirling that these tunnels were used to imprison people. Yes, actual living, breathing people. The FBI has been tight-lipped about the details, but insiders have hinted that what they found down there was disturbing at best, horrifying at worst. And Diddy, well, his team has been scrambling to control the narrative, but even they can't stop the flood of speculation that's broken loose. The most chilling part, some sources say that the tunnels were revealed by none other than one of Diddy's former associates, someone who had been part of his inner circle for years. This person, who remains unnamed for their safety, reportedly tipped off federal agents after witnessing firsthand what was happening in the hidden depths of Diddy's mansion. It's unclear how many people were allegedly kept in these underground cells, or for how long, but the fact that such a discovery was made at all has sent shockwaves through the entertainment world.
It sounded crazy, like I said before. They said that 2,300 people reached out to the law firm, and out of the 2,300 people, I guess they decided to go with just a little over 100, which seems like it's they just put out the number and everybody's calling to see if they can get a check.
It's insane.
Mm-hmm.
It's insane. Now, again, he did say that nothing has been filed yet because he says he wants to make sure that they do their due diligence and get this right.
As more information begins to trickle out, the public is left wondering, what were Diddy's motives for all of this? How did a man who built an empire on music, fashion, and media end up at the center of such twisted allegations? Some have speculated that these underground cells were used as a way to control those close to him, people who may have known too much or were seen as a threat to his carefully curated image. Others have suggested that the cells were part of a much larger, more complex operation involving his famous parties and the elite guests who attended them. Let's not forget that Diddy's parties were legendary. They were the stuff of Hollywood lore, extravagant, over-the-top events that attracted A-list celebrities, models, and influencers from around the globe. But now, with the FBI's investigation in full swing, those same parties are being viewed in a whole new light. Were they just a cover for something far more sinister? Were these lavish gatherings more than just a place for the rich and famous to let loose?
Man, man. I just had like a 3.5 hour cry.
Eyewitnesses who attended some of these parties have begun to speak out, sharing their stories with investigators. According to one source who claimed to have been a regular at Diddy's events, the parties weren't just about glitz and glamour. Behind the scenes, in the VIP rooms in private areas, things allegedly took a dark turn. It wasn't uncommon to see people being ushered into secret rooms or taken downstairs, out of sight from the main event. And now, with the discovery of the underground tunnels, those stories are starting to make a lot more sense. The FBI has been piecing together the puzzle, and it seems like every new revelation points to something even more twisted than the last. Some experts believe that Diddy's mansion wasn't just a place for parties. It was a fortress designed to keep the outside world from seeing what was really going on inside. The tunnels, the cells, the secrecy, it all points to one thing: control. Whether it was controlling the narrative around his public persona or controlling the people in his inner circle, it's becoming clear that Diddy was willing to go to extreme lengths to maintain his power.
If that's part of the indictment, that's somewhat like a blackmail. He was blackmailing people to be in the freak-offs. So that's federal. That could be that's a federal charge. He can't blackmail people to say, yo, listen here, you did it once and you're gonna do it again. That ain't gonna make it with the government or nobody.
As the investigation continues, more and more people from Diddy's past are coming forward, sharing their own stories of bizarre and unsettling experiences at his homes. One former employee, who worked as part of Diddy's security team, described the mansion as a lockdown compound, where access to certain areas was heavily restricted. There were parts of the house that nobody was allowed to go near, the former guard revealed. We were told to stay away from the basement level. I didn't ask questions, but looking back now, it's clear something strange was going on. Another attendee of one of Diddy's infamous parties recalled a particularly unsettling night when she noticed a group of people being led away from the main event and disappearing down a set of stairs. It was like they vanished, she said. One minute they were there, and the next, they were gone. I didn't think much of it at the time, but now, with everything that's come out, I can't help but wonder what was really going on.
If you're just joining us here, was just arrested and taken into federal custody in New York tonight. Sources tell TMZ Homeland Security swooped into a Midtown hotel late Monday where Diddy was staying, and they arrested him.
The piece-by-piece unraveling of Diddy's once glamorous life is showing a much darker side than anyone could have anticipated. And it's not just about the tunnels, the cells, or the parties. It's about the deep-rooted culture of secrecy and control that Diddy allegedly cultivated over the years. The FBI is still investigating, but one thing's for sure. This is just the tip of the iceberg. In fact, it's gotten so intense that there's now talk of Diddy facing some of the most severe legal consequences possible. There's even been speculation that the charges against him could lead to life-altering penalties, given the gravity of the situation. And while his legal team is working overtime to fight the allegations, the sheer volume of evidence being uncovered is making it harder and harder and harder for them to keep up.
Diddy would be throwing all his celebrity mates under the bus.
I mean, that could potentially be coming when it's time for court and when it's time for him to testify. But what we're seeing right now is how important public relations really are to Sean Combs. He's desperately trying to control the narrative behind bars, allowing his attorneys to do documentaries. And
one of the most shocking revelations came from an anonymous source who worked closely with Diddy during his rise to fame. This source claims that Diddy had been planning and constructing these tunnels for years, long before the public ever got wind of it. He was always paranoid, the source said. He didn't trust anyone, and he made sure there were ways to get out, ways to hide things. I didn't realize it at the time, but looking back, it's clear that those tunnels were part of something bigger, something darker. As more insiders come forward, it's becoming evident that Diddy's empire was built on more than just music and business acumen. There was a hidden side to his success, one that involved meticulous planning, secrecy, and a level of control that most people couldn't even begin to imagine. Whether or not the FBI will uncover the full extent of what's been going on behind closed doors remains to be seen, but one thing's for sure, Diddy's carefully crafted image is crumbling before our very eyes.
Why at Diddy and other men like him, financial level and success level, that they cannot go get them somebody.
It's hard to believe that someone who once seemed to have it all, the fame, the fortune, the power, could be facing such catastrophic allegations. But as the evidence mounts, it's becoming harder and harder to deny that there's something deeply troubling about the whole situation. And with each new detail that emerges, it feels like we're getting closer to the truth, no matter how shocking or uncomfortable that truth may be. As rumors continue to swirl about what else might be lurking in those tunnels, one can't help but wonder, how much more is there to uncover? Could there be more hidden chambers, more secrets waiting to be revealed? And what will the ultimate fallout be for Diddy and those in his inner circle? The FBI, for its part, is staying tight-lipped about what they've found so far, but insiders say that the investigation is far from over. In fact, some believe that the worst is yet to come. There's talk of more raids, more searches, and possibly even more arrests as the authorities work to piece together the full scope of what's been going on at Diddy's properties. And with every new piece of information that comes to light, the public's fascination with the case only grows.
I have information that he was arrested tonight at a Manhattan hotel. He is currently being processed. I heard from his attorney they are still maintaining his innocence. They said that in anticipation of these charges that Diddy relocated to New York.
The media, of course, has been all over this story with outlets from all corners of the globe covering every twist and turn of the investigation. Some have even gone so far as to speculate about what might be coming next, whether more high-profile names will be dragged into the scandal, or if we're about to see the kind of downfall that Hollywood hasn't witnessed in decades. But one thing is clear, Diddy's days of living in the shadows are over. The world is watching, and with the FBI hot on his trail, it seems like it's only a matter of time before the full extent of his secrets is laid bare for all to see. And that's where things get really interesting. Because while Diddy's team is doing everything they can to spin the narrative, the reality is that the evidence is stacking up. The tunnels, the cells, the parties. It's all starting to form a picture. And it's not a pretty one. Whether or not Diddy can survive the storm remains to be seen, but one thing's for sure. The world will never look at him the same way again.
As far as, is he going to turn people in? Is he going to cooperate? If the federal government wants him to cooperate, and they're going to cut his time, because right now he's looking at 15 to life. With all the charges he had to, he won't get out till 70 years old. He about 70. That's when they start talking about letting him come to a halfway house.
And that brings us to the next chapter in this twisted saga, the one where we start to unravel the series of events that led to this point. How did it all begin? How did a music mogul with the world at his feet end up here facing some of the most serious allegations imaginable? How did someone as seemingly untouchable as Sean Diddy Combs, a man who built an empire out of nothing, end up here facing some of the most shocking and disturbing allegations we've ever seen? To understand the full scope of the situation, we need to rewind the clock a bit and take a look at the events that led up to this moment. Because, let's be real, Diddy's fall from grace didn't happen overnight. It's been years in the making. It all kicked off in November 2023 when Diddy's ex-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, dropped a bombshell of a lawsuit. And let's just say it was the kind of lawsuit that makes headlines for all the wrong reasons. Cassie, who had been with Diddy for more than a decade, came forward with claims that paint a very different picture of the man who had once been seen as a music industry kingpin. According to her, Diddy wasn't just a controlling boyfriend. He was allegedly involved in some seriously troubling behavior behind closed doors.
In her civil lawsuit, Cassie said that she was the victim of abuse, assault, and rape at the hands of Diddy.
Cassie's lawsuit was filed under New York's Adult Survivors Act, which allowed adult victims to bring forth civil claims even if the alleged events had happened years ago, and Cassie didn't hold back. She accused Diddy of everything from emotional manipulation to physical harm, describing a relationship that was far from the glamorous life seen in the tabloids. In the court documents, Cassie claimed that Diddy had a tight grip on every aspect of her life, keeping her under his control and forcing her into situations that were anything but consensual. She even mentioned an incident where he allegedly broke into her home in Los Angeles in 2018 and forced himself on her, right as she was trying to end their relationship for good. Now, here's where things get even more complicated. The lawsuit also referenced something that has now become infamous in Diddy's case, the so-called freak-offs. Yep, you heard that right. According to Cassie, Diddy orchestrated these wild, multi-day events where all sorts of questionable things went down. And while Diddy's legal team was quick to deny the allegations, the damage was already done. Cassie's claims opened the floodgates, and suddenly, a whole lot of people who had stayed quiet for years started coming forward with their own stories.
Sean had to take responsibility for what he did as an individual. Sean is the one who pulled that gun out. Sean is the one who shot. So he has to take responsibility for that.
But here's the twist. Cassie's lawsuit didn't drag on for months or years, as you might have expected. In fact, it was settled just one day after it was filed. That's right, just one day. Diddy's legal team moved fast, and while the details of the settlement were kept under wraps, it was clear that Diddy wanted this issue to disappear as quickly as possible. Of course, settling a lawsuit doesn't exactly scream innocence, and it didn't take long for people to start wondering if maybe, just maybe, there was more to the story than met the eye. And they were right, because as it turns out, Cassie's lawsuit was just the beginning. In the weeks that followed, more and more people came forward with their own allegations against Diddy. Some were women who claimed to have had similar experiences to Cassie, while others, including men like Rodney Lil Rod Jones, accused Diddy of a disturbing pattern of behavior that extended far beyond his personal relationships. Rodney Jones, a music producer who had worked with Diddy on his latest album, filed his own lawsuit in February 2024. And let's just say, the details were jaw-dropping. Jones didn't just accuse Diddy of inappropriate behavior. He claimed that Diddy had been running what he called a criminal enterprise for years, using his power and influence to manipulate and exploit those around him. According to Jones, Diddy's empire wasn't just built on music and business deals. It was built on carefully orchestrated schemes that included everything from surveillance to intimidation. Jones claimed that Diddy pressured him to engage in activities that went way beyond what would be considered normal in any workplace, and that he had hours of video footage to back it up.
What his team is trying to do is get the public to assume that the government is leaking some of this negative information about him, like that Cassie video. But the reality is, he's got a lot of enemies, and I really don't believe it's
the truth of these claims. Well, that's still up for debate, but the sheer number of people coming forward combined with the intensity of the accusations made it clear that something wasn't right in Diddy's world. By the time March 2024 rolled around, the FBI had taken a serious interest in Diddy's activities. That's when they executed those now infamous raids on his homes in Los Angeles and Miami. And while we've already talked about the tunnels and the other bizarre discoveries made during those searches, it's important to understand just how big of a deal these raids were. The federal agents weren't just there to poke around. They were looking for hard evidence that could tie Diddy to a much larger operation, one that spanned years and involved people far beyond his immediate circle. What they found? Well, that's still being uncovered. But sources close to the investigation have hinted that the FBI seized everything from cell phones to computers to documents that could potentially blow the case wide open. And remember, this wasn't just about Diddy. There were other high-profile individuals involved, too. People who had been at his parties, who had worked for him, who had been part of his world for years. And as the investigation continued, it became clear that Diddy's empire was crumbling from the inside out.
A U.S. judge has ruled that the rapper and producer Sean Diddy Combs will stand trial on federal sex trafficking and racketeering charges in May. He'll be held in prison until then. Sean Combs has pleaded not guilty to charges that he used his business empire to transport women and male workers across state lines to take part in recorded performances. If convicted, he could face a life sentence. David Willis reports.
Fast forward to September 2024, and that's when things really hit the fan. On September 16, Diddy was arrested by federal agents in New York, and the charges were enough to make anyone's head spin. We're talking about allegations of racketeering, trafficking, and even forced labor. But the centerpiece of the indictment, those infamous freak-offs, according to federal prosecutors, these weren't just outrageous parties. They were part of a much larger, much darker scheme that involved coercion, manipulation, and the exploitation of some of the most vulnerable people in Diddy's orbit.
I think it's to be expected, just the shock of this and the questions about what is ahead of us. I mean, how long is he going to be in custody? Is this an R. Kelly situation? Is he going to not get out for a number of years? Is he going to end up serving a long-term prison sentence from this? Or does he have a chance of beating these charges at a trial that could come?
Damian Williams, the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, didn't mince words when he spoke about the case. At a news conference the day after Diddy's arrest, Williams laid it all out, saying that Diddy had been abusing his power and influence since at least 2008, using his business empire as a front for his more sinister activities. Combs abused, threatened, and coerced victims to fulfill his desires, protect his reputation, and conceal his conduct, Williams said. And while Diddy's legal team, led by Mark Agnifilo, was quick to call the prosecution unjust and unfounded, the charges were serious enough that Diddy could be facing life-altering consequences if convicted.
Hey, real quickly, all that commissary stuff, he's not getting any of that because people in the shoe have an abbreviated list. So he's out of luck. No stake for him. Yeah, he is on watch. This guy thought he would have went home. All of a sudden, he didn't get bond. Remember, the first night that he was there, he was like an overnight guest.
And here's the kicker. This wasn't just about Diddy's personal actions. The indictment also painted a picture of a man who had built a network of enablers, people who had helped him carry out his schemes and had turned a blind eye to the things happening behind closed doors. Some of these enablers were employees. Others were high-profile figures from the worlds of entertainment, business, and beyond. And as the investigation continued, it became clear that Diddy's arrest was just the tip of the iceberg. The FBI was combing through years' worth of evidence, and more names were expected to be dragged into the fray as the case unfolded.
It's a question of that, but when you read through the indictment, it's pretty clear who could be indicted as a co-conspirator. Right now, there are people in the indictment who would be considered unnamed co-conspirators, but clearly have played a role in this conspiracy. And I think prosecutors have some big leverage on them because they're hoping that they testify against Diddy as prosecution witnesses.
By this point, Diddy's world was in complete freefall. His legal team was working around the clock to try and clear his name, but the sheer volume of allegations made it seem like an uphill battle. And while some of his famous friends initially tried to stand by him, as more details came out, even his closest allies began to distance themselves. It didn't help that Diddy's own public statements only seemed to make things worse. After the video surfaced in May 2024 showing him attacking Cassie in that hotel hallway, Diddy took to social media to issue an apology. But instead of quelling the fire, it only fanned the flames. "My behavior on that video is inexcusable," he said in the clip, admitting that he had sought therapy and rehab afterward. "I take full responsibility for my actions in that video. I'm disgusted by what I did." But here's the thing. The timing of the apology didn't sit well with a lot of people, including Cassie's legal team. Meredith Feiertag, one of Cassie's attorneys, was quick to call out the apology as nothing more than a calculated move to save face. "This is more about himself than the many people he has hurt," Feiertag said, pointing out that Diddy had denied everything when the lawsuits were first filed. The fact that he only apologized after being caught on tape didn't exactly scream sincerity.
Includes co-defendants, but there's also strategic reasons for the prosecutors to want him to have co-defendants, because right now he hasn't waived his right to a speedy trial, which would force prosecutors to take him to trial pretty quick, which they actually might not be ready to do. But if they supersede him and have co-defendants with him, it makes it a lot easier to pursue a trial continuance without him waiving his speedy trial right.
And that's when the floodgates really opened. After Cassie's lawsuit, it seemed like everyone who had ever been part of Diddy's world had a story to tell. In early September 2024, Dawn Richard, a former member of the girl group Danity Kane, filed her own lawsuit against Diddy, accusing him of assaulting her and threatening her life when she tried to intervene on Cassie's behalf. Richard's lawsuit painted an even darker picture of what was happening behind the scenes, claiming that Diddy had used his power to control not just Cassie, but multiple women in his orbit. According to Richard, Diddy had threatened to end her if she ever crossed him, making it clear that he had the power to make people disappear if they became a problem.
Jay-Z got his ass whooped by his sister-in-law on camera. What's her name? Solange. He got his ass. The feds ain't step in and do nothing. The feds don't care about you getting your ass whooped.
By this point, Diddy's reputation was in tatters, and even the people who had once been his biggest supporters were starting to question just how much they really knew about the man behind the music. The media was having a field day, and every new revelation seemed to make the situation worse. From the tunnels under his mansion to the bizarre stories of secret parties and locked rooms, it was clear that Diddy's carefully crafted public image was falling apart and fast. And it wasn't just the lawsuits that were piling up. In October 2024, Texas-based attorney Tony Busby made headlines when he announced that he was representing more than 120 people who had come forward with their own allegations against Diddy. According to Busby, these weren't just isolated incidents. He described a pattern of behavior that spanned decades, involving everything from manipulation to exploitation. Busby said his team had collected pictures, video, texts, all of which painted a damning picture of Diddy's actions over the years.
It's interesting how when the indictment came out, folks said, well, it's no underage kids in the indictment, it's no sex with minors in the indictment, but now he's got 25 minors allegedly accusing him.
And here's the thing, Busby didn't stop there. He hinted that Diddy wasn't the only one involved, saying that there were high-profile enablers who had helped cover up the behavior. "These names will shock you," Busby said at a press conference, promising that more lawsuits were on the way. It was clear that the case was about to get even messier, and Diddy's legal troubles were far from over. So, where does that leave us now? Well, as of late 2024, the investigation is still ongoing, and Diddy's legal team is fighting tooth and nail to try and clear his name. But with each new lawsuit, each new revelation, it's becoming harder and harder to see how Diddy can come back from this. The man who once ruled the music world is now facing some of the most serious allegations imaginable, and the public's perception of him has changed forever. So, what do you think about the shocking allegations surrounding Diddy? Do you believe there's any truth to the rumors about these underground cells, or is this all just Hollywood drama gone too far? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think other celebrities could be caught up in similar scandals? Let's talk about it. See you next time.